Welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish, the podcast where we sit down with neighbors, experts, and friends to explore the stories, the questions, and the big little issues that shape life in our town, one conversation at a time. This week, we're talking about the Acadian community of Pomquet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish. This is your co-host number one, Justin.
And this is Anuj Jain.
Yeah, co-host number two. I don't know why we just ranked ourselves. I'm going to make you co-host number one for today.
Okay.
He's so enthusiastic. So
Yeah.
we are filming on location, as it were.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I think we should do this more often.
I agree. We took our whole recording setup, and we are now out at the Pomquet Community Center. Is
In
that the
Pomquet.
correct title?
That is.
Yes, and we are talking to Colette Rennie, the chair of the Pomquet Development Society, and Charlie MacDonald, the vice chair of the Pomquet Development Society. And we have you in studio because we don't know what Pomquet is. Let's assume that our listeners know nothing about Pomquet, the community of Pomquet. So we're going to pepper you with questions, and you have to tell us everything about it in 30 minutes.
Sure.
Sounds great.
Okay.
So, Anuj, have you been to Pomquet before?
I have a very good friend. We have a very good friend who lives here. And so we have, and of course, Pomquet Beach. Who hasn't been to Pomquet Beach if you live in Antigonish?
It's very famous.
Just very famous. But I guess, one of the triggers that brought us here is our interview with Trevor Gold, who mentioned, Mi'kmaq history in the same region. But I think you can start from wherever you wish. How would you introduce Pomquet to Antigonishers?
Oh, so much to say. But it's a small community, rural community, probably close to 1,000 souls. That hasn't changed in decades. And predominantly Acadian. So it's a small Acadian settlement nestled around two harbors, Monk's Head Harbour and Pomquet Harbour, and St. George's Bay. An Acadian community that was settled by the Acadians in 1774, but the Mi'kmaq were here long before that. And it's a very close-knit community, lots happening, very isolated. And because of the isolation, members of the community back several decades decided they needed to do something to preserve their culture. So a very strong community spirit here.
So the Acadians, not everybody who's listening, maybe someone's new to Canada. What is an Acadian?
Yeah, and there was some on the internet. There is this idea that people came here directly from France, or they were the exiles that happened. So, what is
Yeah.
the real story?
Yeah.
Not all the first families that came to Pomquet, not all of them were the ones that were expelled. So 1774 were the first 5 families that came to Pomquet. And that later others followed, but those families came from France. They were expelled to France in the expulsions between 1755 and 1770, I think maybe 1770. They were expelled to France, and they settled there, were not treated very well, moved a bit, and decided they didn't need to come back. And they came back, but all their lands were taken back down in the valley. So these people we believe they went to Arichat first, because there was a small group of French-speaking people there, and then they moved along the coast and settled in Pomquet.
So that's French people that were living here originally, and then they were booted back to France, and then came back.
We say French-speaking. We don't say French.
They weren't the French at that.
They weren't French. They were. We can trace our family histories all the way back to the early 1600s.
Oh.
So they were the first French people to settle in the Maritimes. And they developed their own culture separate from France.
So that's like 150 years of becoming not French anymore.
Exactly.
And they were Acadian, and that was the term they would have used at the time?
Yes.
Acadian.
Yeah.
And why that? Where does that word come from?
There's different versions of where the word Acadia comes from. It might have been a Mi'kmaq word. It might have been Arcadia, which was a word that was used, I believe,
To refer to the
to refer to that whole area.
land.
Yeah.
Interesting.
L'acadie.
Yeah.
But they lived here for about, I would say, 5 generations before the deportations, which happened in 1755 too.
Okay.
I believe it was, 1762 maybe. So it was a good stretch, and they deported them back to what would be their homeland, and they were rejected at several ports on ships and whatnot. So there was a lot of loss there. But they still had the determination to come back, but they weren't allowed to settle together, and that's why we see those pockets of Acadian regions throughout the province today.
Okay, it's
This is amazing.
sent
Yes.
back to France after living here for a few generations. You must know that'd be insane. It'd be like me being sent back to England or
And so
something.
Trump is not the only ones deporting people.
Yeah, multi-generational, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So that's it. And then, so Pomquet itself then, because it's, we learned from Trevor, Pomquet is a Mi'kmaq word. So they obviously had a location here along with where they'd been living in Antigonish. So they were, the Mi'kmaq were around, and then the Acadians came back from France. So how did this specific location, Pomquet, arise from that combination?
I'm guessing it's the location around the harbors. Like by the time, so when the Mi'kmaq first arrived, and Trevor would probably tell this as well, the beach, Pomquet Beach, where that whole barrier island system, that did not exist.
Oh,
When the Acadians arrived, when the Mi'kmaq arrived first here, that's been only growing for about 2,000 years, and they were here long before that. So they would have taken advantage of the coastline there, which eventually turned into what we have is we call harbors,
Okay.
and very rich in life, right? And they're the Mi'kmaq dependence on the eel fishery, right? The Pomquet Harbor is known for its
Right, he mentioned
eel
that as well.
fishery.
Yeah.
And so what probably pulled the first families here was for the same reason.
okay.
It didn't go any further because the Scottish were
Yeah.
Antigonish Harbour.
How would you characterize that relationship? Because according to Trevor, it seemed like the two populations were living in harmony for the most part.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Even before the deportation, it was because of the indigenous people that the Acadians were able to survive. So it was grace to that great relationship that we are here today too. And I think just to add to that, even after the first families came to Pomquet, there was much of the clearing of the land to settle those, inner harbor regions. And Colette can probably speak more to that too, that relationship was very strong and needed into the survival that
So
brought us
we
here.
think they first came to Arichat and moved this way. So they would have not just settled Pomquet. Pomquet would be the furthest, sort of the furthest north they would have gone. But they also settled Havre Boucher and Tracadie, right?
Yeah.
Those were strong Acadian communities as well. Those three along that coastline.
So from 1774 to 2026, and I think you celebrated 250 years in 2024. What would be, some milestones that, it'll be interesting to know? What happened along the way? And you grew from 23 families to now about 1,000 people.
Well, the milestones are difficult because they were an illiterate people, so there was nothing written. There's a lot of oral history. So the milestones would have been obviously education, religion. The church very strong as it would be in most French communities.
Is it a Catholic church? Is that the
Catholic
main
church,
association
yes,
with
but that's the
Acadian?
third
Okay.
church building. There was a small chapel built first too, and then that was built in 1862, I believe. Right. So the beginning of education, the schools and the community, commerce.
So the school how long has this school been here?
This one,
2000 and
it's close to the beginning.
2001,
One,
So
yeah,
this,
close.
this school is new. Was there an older school in this spot, or were there other schools?
No, it was by the right at the end of Taylor's Road.
Okay.
It's demolished now, but that was called the Consolidated School. That went from primary to grade 6, and after grade 6, the students went into town.
Okay.
The old St. Andrew Junior School, and then the regional. And prior to that, there were several schools in different areas of Pomquet because kids were walking to school,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And what would be the kind of economic part of that living? Fisheries or
Early on,
trades?
it was just self. It was just they were
Farming,
just farming for
farming,
themselves.
yeah,
There was
homesteading,
there was no
yeah.
commerce.
Right.
There would have been a couple of stores where they would have been able to acquire supplies, but they were self sufficient essentially. So there was no commerce. There were no jobs per se. They were just homesteading. Yeah.
And how did that emerge? I believe Pomquet is very famous in tradespeople.
Yep.
Is that true?
carpenters.
Yeah, and that would have probably begun. And I know I have a ancestor. Well, we both do. can't remember how many generations back he would be now, maybe 4. And he was a boat builder. They actually built boats here in Pomquet. We're talking several ton boats, not little fishing boats. We're talking cargo boats. Yeah, boats. And they would have taken them out to the bay. So even back then, and the forestry industry here, they were exporting wood to make, they're called staves, to make barrels, exporting those, I believe, to Arichat. So shingles as well. And then, it's in the genes. Carpentry is in the genes. They're good tradespeople, and you can talk to any family here and they will have a carpenter in the family somewhere.
Or two. Or three.
Yeah.
That's like I was saying, like I recognize you because your brother worked on my house. So
Yeah.
like it's getting people in from Pomquet to work on construction.
And
in
why
town.
why did you choose him?
Because he was famous for being very good, high-end,
Right.
good carpentry. I needed some fancy windows installed.
Some
and so-
say they don't even need a resume. You just have to say you're from Pomquet.
Exactly.
You can work on anybody's house. So.
That's interesting. So it is a French-speaking community. So it has maintained the language since that time, which doesn't necessarily always happen. The Gaels who lived here lost their language for the most part. The Mi'kmaq, of course, for other reasons, lost the language. But French is very still much a part of daily life. Is that true?
Yeah, I think when we, not to compare, but when we align ourselves with, say, Cheticamp or Ile Madame, we are very different in the sense that we are surrounded by those English communities and have been for such a long time. And when people have to leave the community to work, as they did back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they marry within the community, and they also have to leave the community as well to do so. So I would say that we have tried our very best to maintain that. But when we align ourselves with, say, Cheticamp, we are definitely have brought more English in, and the French level that is speaking has definitely diminished as our ancestors have passed on.
The level, you mean like on an everyday speech? at
Everyday
home?
speech,
Yes.
yes.
And it's less Acadian than it used to
Yeah.
be. It's more French.
Oh, explain that then. So, because not everyone necessarily understands the difference between the different kinds of French in Canada. So, when you say it's less Acadian and more French, what
As
does-
compared to Quebec?
in Quebec, it's its
Or
own.
Quebec,
Quebec's its
yeah.
own problem. So, let's say Acadian versus French. Tell us
Well,
about
if you
that.
had an Acadian sitting here and a Quebecois sitting there, and they were having a conversation, there would be lots of like, what?
Yeah.
Because the Acadian language it evolved into its own particular brand of French. Yes, it's French, but the words that are used, many of the words are used are old French that are no longer used in the French language because the Acadians were an isolated group. So they
Give us an
kept those
example.
words. Right off the top of my head, bitin. Bitin. So bitin, if you ever heard that word before, you talk to an Acadian, they go, know exactly what you mean. It's clothes. Or des ard. It's clothes. If you're putting clothes on the line, you met des ard sur le ling.
And what's the word for car? Isn't it like car?
Des car shot.
Shot.
But because when the car came
didn't
into
exist.
the
It was
a
community,
cart.
there was no name. There was no
no
word
name.
I see.
for that.
Yep.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So in French, they would call them vêtements, right? Des vêtements. But
Yeah.
in Acadian, would say des bitins.
So does that mean because kids go to school here, we'll talk about that later on in French. So when you're teaching French in the school versus French spoken at home, are you teaching French, or are you teaching Acadian French?
It's French for the most
yeah.
part.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But then
Another-
they might go home and speak Acadian.
They may. They may not. Yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, probably not.
And I say that percentage is definitely changing as we move forward with especially the grandparents that they may have that connection to with the Acadian speaking French.
So
They're
how many
losing them.
native Acadian speakers would you say you had? Do you know?
In the community?
Yep, in this community specifically.
I would say it's still a large base of lineage of the Acadians, the roots. But that French speaking Acadian language, it's definitely numbered probably 25%.
I would say.
Okay, it's
Yeah, I
still
would say.
significant.
Yeah.
Language is probably only one part of the community culture. You know, you
Yeah.
have festivals, you have, dance, you have all kinds of weddings. The way weddings are celebrated. How would you characterize? What is so unique about this particular community or Acadian culture?
Before that, I'm going to give you another example of the language.
Right.
And the connection between the Mi'kmaq and the Acadians. So if you ever saw porcupine on the side of the road, you call it a porc-épic. In Quebec, porc-épic. France, porc-épic. Here it's a Midwest. You say
Midwest?
a Midwest to someone, they know exactly what you're talking about. Midwest comes from the Mi'kmaq word for porcupine.
All right.
Because when the Acadians they never saw a porcupine probably
So
before.
the first word they heard.
It's Midwest.
Midwest.
Yeah, and so that word has lasted, right? When I see a porcupine, it's a Midwest.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So back to your question about festivals. So back in the 60s, when, as Charlie mentioned, there was a lot of out movement. Back in the 20s, that was the first sort of out migration of people from Pomquet during the Depression. A lot went to the States. Many returned. Many stayed. So we lost a number of people that way. And obviously the language was lost once they moved there. And there was another, that happened again in the 60s, but not far away. It was to Antigonish for work. And as he said, the intermingling with the English, intermarriage with English, the people in the community realized, wait a minute, what's happening here? And especially when they saw their kids going to school here from P to 6 in English with one or two French courses as they were going through primary school. Then they were bused to English school. They realized they were losing their language. And losing a language means you're potentially losing a culture. And it was at that time in the entire Maritimes, there was a resurgence of Acadian pride. And this community followed along and decided that, excuse me, they needed to do something. So they established an office here for the Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse, which oversaw the activities in the community and how to promote and preserve the Acadian culture. And a group of people in the community came together and decided they were putting on a winter carnival. And to me, I was in upper elementary school when that started, and to me, that there's a lot of pride in that, going back and looking at that and what our elders did for us, because that continued every single year, and every year it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and kids growing up saw that and took pride in who they were in their community.
And that happens in the winters.
In February. Yeah,
every year since.
Every year.
What happens at this carnival?
Oh, do you want
Everything
the
and anything.
older version or the modern version? So there's an evolution
Okay.
of the carnival. So in the old days, because the community was very isolated as well, very very connected culturally. There was so much going on. Acadian food was a highlight, right? So Acadian food was served during the week. We're talking about fricot and the pâté, the meat pies, concerts, dances. Children wear their Acadian garb all week. We had the highlight was the parade. There was a parade, and there were two parts of the parade. There was a children's parade and an adult parade, and everybody got involved. The children's parade was shorter; they went first, then the adult parade followed. They were so popular. It was a little bit of a competition between groups who could be the best, and there were prizes awarded. And the ladies' club, who functioned in this community for 25 years, were just the backbone of many of the activities held here. They took their whatever float they had, and it was pretty remarkable. I remember my mother sitting on a float with a live lamb in her arms. They were it was pretty intense. They were actually asked to go into the Highland Games parade, and
cool.
they did that for several years. So my mother went down Main Street with a live lamb in her arms, and by then it wasn't little.
Just a full-on
From
sheep,
February
right?
to July, that lamb got
And I think it's also funny because obviously Colette has seen that first phase of those carnival years, and I might
'Cause I'm way
have
older
caught-
than you.
Yeah, she's way older than me. Caught the tail end of it.
It's
but
just- yeah.
there's definitely some activities with evolution that can't happen. With the Harbour that used to be able to freeze over. They used to do activities out with horse-drawn, all that stuff. They used to do tours, and even Colette grew up on the Rennie farm, and they used to do hay wagons through there's so many things that today with insurance wouldn't be possible. Like we wouldn't even think of being able to do that, right? So
Right.
it's that switch that we had to really bend, and so some of the things now we do a skating night in town. So a lot of the things, it's easier not easier, but with insurance wise, we have to go to these businesses that happen to be in town, which works out good. So it's been a big shift from the beginning, but it's still a big part of the community and what we do and how we show the pride that we have.
We have it's a whole week of activities. So we have one Acadian meal hosted here, the fricot. There are the school takes part and they have school activities during the week. Some years there's a sing along of old Acadian songs, coffee house, bowling sometimes, and the sledding party's a big hit. They have a huge sledding party and a barbecue here at the school.
And in those events, people who are gathered would be speaking Acadian, mostly.
There's a percentage for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it open to the public in the way, like I think of the Highland Games, like that represents sort of Scottishness?
100%.
Yeah, and people come out, and so it's the same here. It's a tourism event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think now more so with the students that are coming to the school, we have the families that may not live in Pomquet, but they are connected to Pomquet, right? So they're definitely coming back to these events in the afternoon or evening of that week with their kids. So we definitely see those new faces, which is good.
So what about the tourism industry in general? Because you have an interesting culture here that's very high profile. You see the flag around. Is there a tourism industry built up? Because like personally, I know, I go to like Chez de Laurier or I go to the beach or, I'm the carnival. But are you purposely trying to attract people?
Yes, always. But we're not sort of out there in a sense that other communities might be. But we do it kind of quietly because the beach obviously speaks for itself. People know where it is, and it's a beautiful beach. But Chez de Laurier is something that's built up over the last 20 years. And,
What is Chez de Laurier for people
Chez
who
de
don't know?
Laurier is an old homestead belonging to the Delory family. Originally it was De Laurier. It was anglicized to Delory. So the Delorys you see in Pomquet are all connected to that homestead, including us. And so I believe it was in early 1990s that the last resident of that house was single. He was elderly, and he decided to sell the place. He sold it to the Kingsley Brown, a local journalist, and then Kingsley Brown had the foresight to sell it to the government. So that whole coastline from the end of Pomquet Beach all the way to Dunsbank Harbour is all protected now. So the government owns the site. There was an old house on the site and an old barn. The old barn was demolished because it was dangerous. And the community realized the importance of that house, that homestead, and we're in negotiations with the government. So we actually leased the property for minimal. And so we leased an acre in the house. And so we turned it into a tea room. And in the 20 years, we were able to get funding. We built an interpretive center on site. And we have a stage on site. And the tea room is now... people rent the property for weddings and any private functions they wish, but we also host every summer Friday Acadian lunches that we don't advertise anymore. We had to stop advertising 10
Because
years
you get
ago
so many people.
Crowded,
and we've got people from all over. They just hear about it and they show up. When we started doing our Friday lunches, we were having one Friday we had 35 people. We thought, this is great. How do we attract 35 people to this place? Now we have every Friday it's over 200.
Yeah, I showed up to one of those a while back, but I haven't gone back probably because I can't get in.
Okay,
200 people every
there
Friday.
There are lineups from 11 till 2. And we were hosting these over the summer, July and August, every Friday, and then COVID hit. And COVID, besides all the other damage from COVID, we lost a lot of our volunteer base. So now we're only open for 4 Fridays in the summer. The last Friday in July, and then I believe the 3 in August. And we also host the Acadian Day celebrations up there on August 15th. But that whole weekend, from August 14th, our Friday Acadian lunch to 15th and 16th, we're calling those Pomquet Come Home Days. And Charlie can speak to that because he's spearheading Pomquet Come Home Days, which is a relatively new initiative.
Yeah, so probably it would be after we celebrated our 250th anniversary in 2024. We had a week-long celebration at that time, and the outpouring connection that it has made with people coming back and just the involvement and engagement we had, we said we really need to do something with this. And that kind of came from the birth with Pomquet Come Home Days, Chez Nous à Pomquet. And that is taking place, as Colette says, in August, the 14th, 15th, and 16th. And that started back, that their first was last year. We weren't really sure what we were doing, so we just kind of went with the flow, and we decided to cut it back. We weren't going to do a week; we were going to do a weekend to see how it was going to go. And we did a beautiful different activities throughout that weekend. It went really well. But the big thing, I think, as we always like to push ourselves outside of our comfort zones, we wanted to give something nostalgic to the community. And what better way to do that than to bring back the salmon suppers that were once here in Pomquet. The last one that had taken place by the Ladies Club, they had done the salmon suppers for many, many decades, had taken place in 2006. So we were looking at 20 years since that last event, and many of those volunteers are gone, no longer with us. So we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And as a back note, I think just to this is, in the height of those suppers, they were serving up to 1,200 people on a Thursday evening.
20 years ago.
In conjunction with Highland Games.
With a conjunction with Highland
Games.
So they had it on a
weekend.
Thursday
Or Highland
evening.
Games week.
And in the height, they were serving over 1,200 people. There was people coming from, all over the province.
Wow.
And so we wanted to recreate a sense of that. Didn't want to go to 1,200, obviously. So we had pre-sold tickets on that event. We had served, I think, over 420 people, I believe, which was amazing here at the community center. Lots of great feedback, lots of great stuff to work on for this summer. So it is taking place on August 16th. And it was really good, I think, for us to see that those surviving members of the Ladies Club were able to come and socialize, enjoy, sit down, eat salmon for once, because they, were working always at those suppers. So that was a big kind of thing from last year's event. And this year, again, it is going to be a big staple. So that's on the Sunday, and on the Saturday we have a fun-filled day up at Château with bouncy castles, fireworks, live entertainment, frico, barbecue. It's a fun-filled day.
Fireworks.
Fireworks, yeah. And there'll be other events on the Friday and the Saturday morning that people can attend, and we'll be sending out those details shortly.
And that's for the public at large?
Yeah, that's for...
So
so I have had people already call for the salmon supper from Halifax.
So that's a famous thing.
Yeah, so...
In terms of salmon, there's a salmon collapse crisis? Is that why it
Yeah,
stopped?
I think so. They were having a hard time procuring
Sourcing the
Yeah.
salmon.
Plus the Ladies Club disbanded.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
as
so it's
well.
like a
Yeah.
perfect storm of
Yeah,
problems.
and they used to buy the fish. They used to plank them, scales, everything themselves. So obviously in today's market, that's it's not necessary. We can buy portion sizes already done. So that for us is a big change also, and it helps the volunteers that are signing up also.
And that Friday is for Pomquet Come Home Days. It's the last Friday that Chez Laurier will be open for a meal. So we have 4 Fridays, and those Fridays serve traditional Acadian cuisine at a very reasonable price because we wanted to make it accessible to people. Cool. So
I'd like to ask about the place that we are sitting here. A lot of people just drive by here and see this beautiful school, and it's kind of a bit of an iconic space for people, especially who are from outside. Tell us a little bit about who comes here. And you said it's not just people from here; there are people from outside that send their children here. Tell us a little bit about the school and why people send their children all the way here, even when they might be living in Antigonish or otherwise.
Yeah, and I think also just to circle back to the tourism thing of, is Pomquet big on the map? I think overall that Pomquet may be forgotten often in this little part of the province because we have been put, isolated around the English communities, and Cheticamp and Île-Madame is so far, and you're talking about Clare, and that's so far away, right? So I think that we are known for the beach, but yet have so much more to offer, and there's so much more that people don't know. And I think the school here is one of those things that a lot of people, they know about, but they don't really know the history behind. So I live in Cape George, and I graduated from Pomquet School, so I made that long trip to school every day. And you are seeing that more and more as years go on, that there's a lot of families that attend the school.
Why is that?
I think it might be the attraction for the kids to either have opportunities in their lives or even to connect back to the roots. So there's a lot of the intermarriage. My mother was from Pomquet, but obviously I'm a MacDonald. So we definitely see those names in the school now, that they might have had a grandparent that was Acadian that lived in Pomquet at one time. So we definitely see that resurgence with those people and those attending. When I was in my graduating class, there was 9 people graduating, and this year is the biggest yet they've had so far, which is 26, I believe. Which that might not sound like a lot to compare to the regional or another school, but there's definitely some importance there that they're understanding that it means something, and it is good to see that they're sticking to it. There was definitely a time where they would reach grade 9 and the students would decide to switch to town. So we are seeing a bit of a change there, and we are definitely seeing more classes. So there's 2 grade 2s or 2 grade 3s. We are seeing that in more
So
recent.
is it still a provincial curriculum, or is it a different curriculum?
So
yeah.
it's curriculum.
Yeah.
It's a CSRP curriculum.
Yeah.
The Acadian School Board. So it's an Acadian school. It has Acadian status, and there are members of this community that fought long and hard for this because they knew the importance of keeping that language and not sending their kids off to Antigonish for English school. So it's completely French. They would have one course in English, I believe, every grade. And
Yeah,
that's
after
it.
grade 4, they would have that one
Course
of English.
Otherwise, it's all French, as opposed to a French immersion program,
Yeah, that's
which
right.
is different.
And this is not part of the straight regional.
No.
This is
So
part
we-
of the Acadian system.
CSRP.
So they
Conseil
are-
Scolaire Acadien Provincial.
Yeah, and they are a school board as compared to the straight regional or center of
But
education.
they have their schools scattered across the province and all the Acadian regions, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So there's 23 schools across the province.
The closest to us would be Torbay, Larry's River.
Larry's River.
Just got status.
So for people who aren't that familiar with the school systems or are new to town, in town you have the straight regional school board, and you can take French immersion, which means you take a large number of
Correct.
classes in French. But here it is a French-speaking school.
Yeah.
It is all
Announcements are in French.
Yeah.
Everything is in
Emails in
French.
French.
the whole
everything,
thing.
yeah.
And I know people who send kids here who have zero connection. They just want their kids to be in a different language because these are multicultural families, and they're like, yeah, we speak a few languages at home. I want my kids to just learn French, and so they send them out here. I know a couple that have done
It will
that.
be very attractive in some ways, and I'm just thinking aloud, because chances are that the classes are smaller, and you get much more, better attention from teachers. Is that also a factor or not?
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely a factor. I think that a barrier that we see more often now, that as the years go on, that the many of the families that are sending their kids here might be for opportunities. However, they may not be speaking French or do not know how to speak French. And whereas before you had a grandparent or your mother or your father spoke French and they could help you at home. Yeah. So we definitely might be seeing effects of that, right? How that can affect in today's society at all different languages, and with technology and that language barrier for the parents, that, there are opportunities as well as for them. But yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, because your kid is coming home with some math homework and telling you how they're doing it, and you can't understand anything. So that you can't help your kid anymore. It's interesting.
Do you also have, crafts, people who do different crafts here, and you never thought of having a small market here, which would be profiling or selling that? Is that something that happened here?
No, we've had, at Chez de Laurier, when we open, we do have a little called mini market where we display some
you do?
things. Yeah, it just opened during those Fridays, or when we also have a lobster roll event in September, the second Sunday in September, and that's very well attended as well because people miss their lobster, right? In September, they hadn't had it since June. But there's a little market here. There's one fella in the community, Matthew Duera, who has a little vegetable stand in the summer. Every Saturday morning, he sets up at where the old school used to be. But no, I don't know how. I think a lot of people do things online now.
Yeah. So we are sitting in the community center, which is attached to the school. And this was news to me because we were coming to meet you today, and you're like, it's at the community center. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about because this is a relatively new building. So
Beautiful building.
And then you gave us a tour just before we started recording. I'm like, oh my gosh, this place is fancy. It has a ton of cool things happening here. Tell us about the space that we're currently in. What is it used for? How did it come about?
Yeah, so I think that before we even start there, we have to address that prior to this building for at least 50 to 60 years, the community had been working very hard, and there was a need about 15 years ago that was addressed that we need a facelift here. We need to have a infrastructure where volunteers can easily volunteer. So that kind of created the board of Pomquet Beach, as the acronym is, and it's Pomquet
Area
Recreational.
Recreational Cultural Development Association.
Yeah, so they formed to get this kind of jump started. So there was definitely many hoops and many jumps that had to be done. But eventually it's got us here. So there was an application that was done to build on at the same time because the school needed an expansion. So the school had been kind of busting. They had 5 portables out back.
Yeah.
So there was a big need for an expansion. And it was at that time, La SASC, was the Société Acadienne Sainte-Croix. They are the office that is here in Pomquet, and they used to be located next to the church in the old fire hall, and upstairs was the museum. So the application was drawn that if it was possible, they could manage the center. The center could therefore be attached to the school. The community, there was a capital campaign of $800,000, which was raised. And that needed to, in part of the deal with the CACP and the federal government, provincial government, they all played big roles in this building. It came to be, and it was accepted. And that is kind of how we are here today. And so the Société Sainte-Croix, they manage it. And we have a fitness gym in here that people can buy memberships for.
Attached right to the school.
Attached to the school. But it is 2 different entities for like insurance purposes. So you can, there's big doors and all that stuff. So
Sure. Fire breaks and all
that. Yes.
all that stuff. So, which is very good. So yeah.
2 meeting rooms.
2 meeting rooms.
A museum.
A museum, that's right.
A large hall that can hold, 400. I can't remember what the capacity is.
With a stage and lighting and all that.
Yes,
yeah.
and a fully equipped kitchen and
Fancy
storage
kitchen.
area. Yeah, and 2 offices for the.
So who's using it then? Before you were saying, because we went to the kitchen, I'm like, this is great. Does it ever get used? And you're like, oh my gosh, it's used all the time.
Community organizations use this. Meetings are held here all the time. We're setting up the museum. We have a summer student. We've hired a summer student for the summer, so that museum will be open every day, July and August, and winter carnival events are held here. There are rentals. We have crib tournaments here every 2 weeks in the summer. Chase the Ace is held here every week. We've had fundraisers for community members here. So lots going on. It's rented out to other members of the community or out the greater community of Antigonish. They can rent it for birthday parties, weddings.
Before we move on, did I miss anything in that application? You can cut this out, but did I miss any steps?
No, that it's a CSAP building, and they run the building. They keep the lights and the heat.
That's
on.
good political instinct. You make sure you name your sponsors.
I mean, I do work for the CSAP, so I don't want to get the
But
cut.
they've been phenomenal because we don't have, as organizations in this community, and there are several organizations, we do not have to fundraise to keep this building operational.
That's helpful.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable because those community organizations that have to do that, kudos to them.
Every
because
year
it's
is
difficult.
It's a big year,
It's a
and it
challenge.
allows us to focus on the culture aspect
exactly.
of doing stuff that we don't rely on the funding, that's the money that's coming back, to keep the lights on, keep the driveway plowed.
Yeah.
The
The
grass
list
cut.
goes on. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Right.
Will it be fair to assume that Pomquet is now much more mixed community, mixed language, mixed culture? And so, would you characterize the community engagement as primarily families who are Acadian, or everybody just comes here because they live here?
Yeah, it's mixed.
It's more
mixed.
diverse,
So,
yeah.
You know, when we have a meeting for Pomquet Development Society, and our main focus is the Chez de Laurier property, when we have a meeting, we are technically a Société de Développement de Pomquet. We are a French organization or Acadian organization. We do not hold our meetings in French because we have members that are non-French speaking.
That's
You know,
interesting.
yeah, and that's
just
our community today. Yeah.
But I have the impression overall, though, that the community is moving up from strength to strength. You're adding more students. You've got a nice new community center. You're restarting some of these festivals that have died. So it's getting stronger culturally. So when you think about where you are now, and then think about 20 years in the future, where do you see the future of this community? Who's here? What languages are they speaking? How many students do you have? What does it look like, do you think?
Colette's still going to be here. No. No, but I think that we have to also just address that assimilation is real, and it is something that's active, and that the school definitely helped in delaying that process. I don't think we would be any different than Havre Boucher or Tracadie in this aspect of the French-speaking Acadian and the loss of that. So I think that's important to address that as well. But for me, we focus so much on the importance of the pride and showing that through the festival. So for us, I don't think that it is important to speak all of the language and that, but it's to keep that going for those people who have never spoken it but have direct ties to Pomquet, because
It's a
it's
very interesting question that you're asking. You know, I can't help but go back to my roots. India has 23 official languages. All the provinces, and I am born to a Hindi-speaking parents, but I grew up in a province where first language was Oriya. So I ended up learning 4 languages: Sanskrit, Hindi, Oriya, and English. And this idea that I may lose Hindi if I'm learning Oriya or vice versa is actually not true. You know, and that's probably also happening in Europe. So I think so. The idea of assimilation doesn't mean that if you learn one thing, you lose another. You can actually grow both together, and that's the kind of not a zero-sum game. But I'm just kind of thinking aloud. You know,
it's different. We have to
Yes.
embrace the change. We
have
can't
to,
stop
yeah.
it. You have to embrace it, and it's just a different sense of community. The sense of community is still there.
Yeah.
It just expresses itself in a different way.
And we
but
see
like
that.
Charlie said, we just have to keep all those stories. You know, we're walking on the shoulders of really special people to get us where we are today. And what we are trying to do, especially with the museum, is to keep those stories alive. Even if you're not from here, even if you just moved here 6 months ago, you have no idea what this community is about. You could watch one of the vignettes we put together last summer and say, "Wow, this is cool. I'm part of this community."
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
I was just talking to my friend in Ireland. She's from out in Leitrim, and there are Irish-speaking communities there, so Irish Gaelic as first language. And she was saying that because they have the same problem of people are losing their language, and it's always a battle to keep Irish alive. It's a minority language. But there are people moving from Africa who live there now, who are driving taxis. And she was in a car with a guy from Africa, and he's like, "Yeah, my kids are going to get Irish-speaking school, and they're teaching me Irish. And I'm so proud to be learning the language of this location." And they are assimilated immediately. If you're learning Irish, you're interested in the culture, even if you're not learning Irish, you're part of that community. So it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're, like you're saying, I think, if you're interested, like, you know, you have relations here, but you're out in Cape George, but you're part of this community now. And that's because you embraced it for what it is. So it doesn't matter in a sense where you're from.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
But
saying?
the definition of community is different in 2026 than it was in 1726.
I think that's a beautiful,
Beautiful
message.
thing. If I may, we may take you out again, and so this beach is famous for its plovers,
Piping plovers?
yeah, and seals come in the winter.
Sometimes. I haven't seen any in a while because of not much ice on the bay these last few years. But it's a remarkable piece of a remarkable landform, because if you know, I'm a geologist, my first profession. So if you want a geological perspective, that beach did not exist 2,000 years ago. So it developed because there's current coming from the Cape where Charlie's from, and it's dragging the sediment. And when it hits Chez de Laurier, there's a promontory there.
They take all my sand. They take all the sand from me.
The current slows down, and all the sand and sediment is deposited. So that is prograded. So the first dune would have developed about 2,000 years ago, and then another 100 years to be another one, and so on and so on. So the dune system that when you drive to the beach, it's about 2,000 years old, but you're driving through a series of about 20 dunes as you're driving through. So it's one of the few beaches in the province that's actually prograding or growing. It's actually accumulating sediment. And every year when you go to the boardwalk, if you go in the spring before the workers get out there, you have to walk through sand at the end of the boardwalk, which they have to shovel out because every year it just fills
Adds
in.
more. Fascinating.
Yeah, and the piping plovers are there. There's a group this year off to the sort of south. I think somebody saw a few chicks there once there, so they're protected. There's signs there, but just a public service announcement that if you're out there walking with a dog, keep your dog on a leash because it takes one dog to destroy the endangered piping plovers, right?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of subjects, but we should probably wrap up. We've been talking a long time. So if there's a message that you could give to the greater Antigonish community, especially people who don't necessarily know anything or have never even been to Pomquet, imagine that. What do you want to say to them?
What I would say to people that are in Antigonish is just come for a Sunday drive. It's a beautiful community to drive through. Like some people say, they're perfectly manicured lawns in Pomquet. Everybody takes pride in their lawn, but it's beautiful to drive around. It's a community that's nestled along two harbours and a bay, and it's quite beautiful driving along those two harbours and go to Chez de Laurier for a stunning view of St. George's Bay and the Cape, and you can see Cape Breton off in the distance. And and if you see someone walking on the side of the road, just stop and have a conversation. But come down to Chez de Laurier for Friday lunches. Come home days in August 14, 15, 16.
And if anybody wants to get involved, there are so many different outlets to do so. Mm-hmm. You don't have to take part of an organization to do that. You can just, help out on a Friday. You just reach out to anybody down here. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing that people might have an idea of that. Oh, if I can't speak French or if I'm not Acadian, I can't take part. That's not true. Mm. Like anybody can, get involved. That's the whole thing about what we do is really to just promote it and get it out there.
Yeah, we have a Facebook, we have a presence, social media presence. So Centre Historique, traditionally called a museum, but we're calling it it sounds better in French. Centre Historique has a Facebook page.
Everything sounds better in
French. Chez de Laurier has a Facebook page. Percarda has a Facebook page. Société Acadienne Sainte Croix has a Facebook page. So we have a social media presence.
Is there a main page you would say, like, oh, if you want to know about Pomquet, go
to the Pomquet Community website. Just if you Google Pomquet Community, it should pop up there. It's newly.
Yeah,
last summer.
Yeah, okay.
All the businesses are there. All the community organizations are there. All the, we don't have the activities up, the events up there yet. That's
a newly developed thing.
But it'll give a good overview of what's here.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, Colette, Charlie, thank you very much for being here. I would say only we are in your place. So you didn't come to us, we came to you. So thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, exactly.
And
thank you.
Wonderful experience just driving here and being here.
Thanks. Great.
Thank you so much.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci. Bye. Merci. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Antigonish. If you like the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe. Just go to letstalkantigonish.ca and click. Voila! You'll receive new episodes right in your email inbox.
This podcast is a labor of love. Please consider making a contribution, small or large, maybe a monthly subscription.
A thank you to all of our supporters and subscribers, especially our paid subscribers through the Substack. You are really helping us to keep this podcast going, and we look forward to expanding it in the future. Let's talk Antigonish. A huge thank you to Whidden Park Campground, one of the sponsors of Let's Talk Antigonish.